Picture a typical classroom filled with 10-year-olds, just a normal group of 10 kids. Now, I want you to imagine that 9 of those children literally cannot read or understand a simple, basic story. It's a pretty devastating image, right? Well, according to a 2022 World Bank report, this isn't just some hypothetical worst-case scenario. It is the actual reality of learning poverty in the Philippines right now. 9 out of 10 children are struggling with the most basic literacy. It's a staggering, heartbreaking statistic, but honestly, it's exactly why we're here today. Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're joining me because today we're going to unpack a major national policy intervention designed to tackle this exact crisis head-on. We're diving straight into the Department of Education's Administrative Order Number 018, Series of 2025. This order actually lays out the complete implementing guidelines for the Academic Recovery and Accessible Learning Program, which is rooted in Republic Act 12028. We're going to look at exactly how this policy aims to completely reshape the educational future for millions of Filipino learners. Here is our roadmap for the day. We'll start with the learning loss crisis, then we'll meet the ARAL program, walk through the learner's journey, look at tracking progress and success, and finally, we'll cover funding academic recovery. Okay, let's jump into Section 1, the learning loss crisis. So, as we touched on, learning poverty in the Philippines sits at an overwhelming 91%. To put that into perspective, results from both national and international large-scale assessments show critically low proficiency levels in reading and math across the board. The vast majority of these students are just performing way below their expected grade level. This massive learning loss, which was heavily worsened by those prolonged school interruptions we all remember, is the absolute baseline for why the Department of Education had to create a highly structured, data-driven intervention. That brings us right into Section 2, Meet the ARAL program. So, what is it? ARAL stands for the Academic Recovery and Accessible Learning Program. Its core promise is to provide a completely free, highly effective national learning intervention for students who are failing or really struggling in their day-to-day lessons. The ultimate goal here is to help these students actually hit the competencies set for their specific grade levels. And a quick note, this program formally replaces older sub-programs you might have heard of, like the National Learning Recovery Program and Catch-Up Fridays, bringing all that effort under one cohesive, focused umbrella. Now, the ARAL program runs during the regular school year, but it also extends into ARAL summer programs. It heavily targets foundational skills. We're talking reading and mathematics for grades 1 through 10, and science specifically for grades 3 through 10. And for the youngest kids in kindergarten, the focus is deeply integrated into building basic literacy and numeracy skills right during their normal developmental blocks of time. It has to be highly targeted. Think of it kind of like a medical triage system. You have to focus the intensive care exactly where the vital signs are the absolute weakest. Let's move on to Section 3, the learner's journey. Let's trace what this actually looks like for a struggling student step by step. Everything kicks off with what's called the BOSY assessment. That stands for the Beginning of School Year Assessment. This is how teachers identify the learners who really need help right out of the gate. From there, they enter the ARAL program itself and receive targeted tutorials. But it's not just a black hole where we hope for the best. There is continuous active monitoring through formative and midline assessments. The system is constantly asking, is the student grasping this? Are these tutorials actually working? Based on those continuous check-ins, a learner is going to take one of 3 distinct paths. First, if they hit their grade level competencies, huge success. They exit the ARAL program. Second, if they're showing improvement but are still a bit below grade level, they just continue getting those targeted tutorials. But the third pathway, this is absolutely crucial for accountability. If a learner shows no improvement and continues to struggle, they aren't just left to languish. Teachers are required to refer these cases to their school heads for much more specialized support. It becomes a collaborative decision involving tutors, teachers, and specialists to make absolutely sure no child slips through the cracks. Which leads us to Section 4, Tracking Progress and Success. The policy establishes a massive monitoring and evaluation toolbox. I know, looking at it, it's a total alphabet soup, but let's demystify it really quick. To measure actual skills, teachers use core tools like the CRLA for rapid literacy checks, the RMA for rapid math assessments, and the PhilIRI for a much deeper reading inventory. But this data doesn't just sit in a teacher's desk. It feeds directly into national databases, the Learner Information System and the Enhanced Basic Education Information System. All of this data eventually rolls up into the the ARAL dashboard. So the big takeaway here is that schools and regional offices will be analyzing this data constantly to make real-time adjustments and move resources exactly where they're needed most. And finally, Section 5, Funding Academic Recovery. Okay, before we talk about where the money is coming from, let's talk about where it absolutely will not come from. This quote is pulled straight from Item 11 of the DepEd order, and honestly, it is a massive relief. Under no circumstance shall a learner or teacher be required to shoulder the undue burden or be compelled to pay for teaching learning resources. That means this policy explicitly protects our teachers and our families from paying out of pocket for these interventions. It's a rock-solid guarantee written right into the rules. So if teachers and parents aren't footing the bill, who is? Well, the funding approach is highly diversified. First up, DepEd is optimizing its own annual budget, specifically tapping into funds for the basic education curriculum and textbooks. Second, they're leaning on local support by using the Special Education Fund through local school boards. Third, if they run short, the policy creates direct pathways to request supplemental budgets from the Department of Budget and Management. And lastly, it actively encourages sourcing funds through partnerships with local government units and civil society organizations. It's a true whole-of-society funding model to make sure this program actually has the fuel to run. And that brings us to our final thought for today. The Department of Education Order 018 has given us a meticulously structured, heavily monitored roadmap to combat that terrifying 91% learning poverty rate. The pathways are laid out, the assessments are standardized, the financial safety nets are in place. But, a policy on paper is only as good as the people bringing it to life in the classrooms and in our homes. The ARAL program gives us the roadmap for sure, but are our local governments, our civil society partners, our educators, and our parents really ready to walk this path together? It's a shared responsibility now, and the future of those 9 out of 10 children depends entirely on our collective follow-through. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.